Ziqing held the steering wheel and stared at the winding mountain road ahead. Outside the car window, the city lights gradually became sparse. The setting sun cast its orange-red rays on the asphalt road, lengthening their shadows. Li, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was looking down at her phone, frowning slightly. "Hey, Ziqing, are you sure this place is worth coming all the way for us? The internet says that this foggy forest is no joke. Locals say it is haunted and anyone who goes in can't get out." Li raised her head, with a hint of worry in her tone. She is Zi Qing's best friend. The two have been together since the photography department of the university. Li was always the rational one, while Zi Qing was the curious adventurer. Ziqing smiled and the car swayed slightly when turning. "Li, you are too careful. We are here for inspiration, not adventure. Think about it, a forest filled with fog all year round, with tree shadows distorted like abstract paintings, can definitely be included in photography exhibitions. We are tired of taking pictures of urban scenes, high-rise buildings and neon lights. How can there be such a sense of mystery?" Li shook her head and put away her phone. Okay, you're right. But I just checked, and people in the nearby villages said that there is something wrong with the fog. It was fine in the summer, but now that autumn has come, it is as thick as milk. Some people say there are strange things happening in there, and there are many missing cases. Let's at least not look back before dark. The car drove into a narrow road, and dense woods began to appear on both sides. The air is filled with the smell of damp earth, mixed with a hint of pine. Ziqing took a deep breath and said excitedly, "Do you smell it? This smell is purely natural. It is much stronger than the air conditioner in our studio." She parked the car in an open space on the side of the road and grabbed her camera and backpack from the back seat. "Let's go, Li. The sun hasn't completely set yet, so hurry up and take some pictures." Li sighed and followed anyway. She carried her equipment and they walked side by side into the edge of the forest. The fog was indeed as thick as the rumors, and after walking only a few dozen meters, the vision ahead became blurry. The sunlight is filtered by the fog layer into a gray-white halo, and the tree trunks are looming in the fog, like a group of standing ghosts. "Zi Qing, slow down. The fog is so thick that I can't even see the road under my feet." Li took Zi Qing's arm and lowered her voice. She is a careful person and always likes to remind you at critical moments. "What if I get lost? The cell phone signal is also weak." Zi Qing couldn't stop. She raised her camera and pressed the shutter on the twisted shadow of a tree. The sound of the shutter echoed in the fog, sounding particularly crisp. "Li, look at this tree. The branches are bent like human fingers, and when the mist wraps around them, it's almost alive. It's so perfect, I feel inspired." She squatted down, adjusted the angle, and took a few more photos. The mist gently brushed against her cheek. It was cool and had an indescribable strangeness, which made her shiver a little. But her curiosity outweighed her discomfort, and she stood up and walked deeper. "Here, help me hold on, I want to shoot the bushes over there." Ray followed, eyes darting around. "You girl, you are always so impulsive. I remember the last time I went to an abandoned factory to shoot a film, you almost tripped over the wire. Now this place is even weirder. I heard there are wild beasts and so on." She tried to use humor to lighten the atmosphere. "What if you meet a wolf? Will they take a picture of you too?" Ziqing laughed, turned around and patted Li on the shoulder. "Wolves? They don't bother to care about our two best friends. Don't worry, I'll protect you." Their laughter dispersed in the fog, but was quickly swallowed up by the silence around them. There was no wind in the forest, and there were no birds chirping. There was only the sound of their footsteps on the fallen leaves, making a tiny rustling sound. After walking for about 20 minutes, the fog became thicker. On Ziqing's camera screen, the tree shadows in the photos began to look strange, and the branches seemed to be twisting slightly. She rubbed her eyes, thinking it was fog that blurred the lens. "Li, this fog is a bit weird. Why does it look like it's moving when photographed?" Li came over to take a look, frowned and said, maybe it's the refraction of light. Ziqing, let's not go too far, the sky is getting dark. I have a bad feeling. There was a hint of nervousness in her voice, and her rational brain began to sound the alarm. At this moment, a strange sound came from the front. It was like a low groan, mixed with the crisp sound of branches and leaves being torn apart. It wasn't the sound of wind or an animal. It sounded like a human voice, but it was distorted out of tune. What is that? Ziqing stopped, her heart beating faster. She grabbed the camera and looked in the direction of the sound. Something was vaguely moving in the fog, and a vague outline flashed past. Li also heard it, and she took Ziqing's arm. Don't move. It might be a wild boar or something. Let's move back. But as soon as she finished speaking, the sound came closer again, this time it was clearer, like bones rubbing together, accompanied by a wet dragging sound. Curiosity defeated fear, Ziqing gently broke away from Li's hand and walked forward tiptoe. Ray, just take a look. What if it's some good material? Maybe it's animals fighting. She raised her camera and peered through the viewfinder. In the mist, a black shadow gradually became clear, not an animal, but a corpse. No, wreckage. They took a few steps closer and finally got a clear look. It was the twisted remains of a humanoid, half buried in the dirt and leaves. The body was bent like an insect with a broken back, the limbs were elongated, the skin was so pale that it was almost transparent, and it was covered with irregular cracks, as if it was being stretched open from the inside by something. The head is tilted sideways, the eyes are hollow, and there is a dead leaf stuck in the mouth. The sweet, rotten smell filled the air, making your stomach churn. Oh my God, is this a person? Li's voice trembled, she covered her mouth and took a step back. Zi Qing, let's go. This is definitely not a natural death. It looks like being bitten by some monster. Ziqing stood there blankly, the camera slipping from her hand. She stared at the wreckage, and a scene suddenly flashed in her mind, not the current forest, but the old house of her childhood. That was the shadow of her childhood. After her father left home, her mother always cried late at night, and the shadows in the room stretched long, as if they wanted to swallow everything. She seemed to see the shadow crawling out from the corner, reaching out to grab her, and the cold touch crawled up her calf. Her heart skipped a beat, and she blinked. The illusion faded, leaving only mist and debris. Zi Qing. What's wrong with you? Li shook her shoulders, her face pale. You look so bad. Are you poisoned by the mist? Let's leave immediately. Ziqing shook her head, suppressing the inexplicable panic. Why do childhood memories suddenly come back to me? She took a deep breath, the mist entered her lungs, and the chill reached her heart. I'm fine. It's just that this thing is too weird. Li, don't you think there is some secret hidden in this place? We can't just leave like this, we have to find out. What if someone is in danger? Ray's eyes widened and her tone was urgent. Check it out. Ziqing, are you crazy? This is obviously a crime scene, or worse. Let's call the police. Although the mobile phone signal is poor, we can always make calls. Ziqing turned around and looked into the deeper fog, where the shadows of the trees were swaying in the dusk, as if they were whispering. She felt a pull, as if the forest was calling. Call the police. This place is so remote, can the police arrive in time? Li, we are photographers, but we are also human beings. At least go forward and see if there are any clues. Please, just do me a favor. Li hesitated for a moment, looked at her friend's firm eyes, and finally nodded. Okay, but just go a little bit. If something goes wrong, we'll get out immediately. Remember, your instincts are sometimes right, but I don't want to make headlines this time. They picked up their cameras, supported each other, and walked toward the thick fog behind the wreckage. The strange noise seemed to be coming again, faintly, tempting them deeper into this unknown horror. The mist was like a thick veil, enveloping their footsteps. Ziqing and Li carefully walked around the twisted carcass and moved in the direction of the sound. The fallen leaves made a wet squeaking sound underfoot, and each step felt like stepping on a sponge, and the suction was unsettling. Ziqing's heart was still pounding, and the lingering shadow of her childhood lingered like fog, but she forced herself to focus on what was in front of her, and the camera in her hand became her talisman. Li, did you hear that? That voice seems to be leading us over. Ziqing whispered, her voice muffled in the fog, as if it was half swallowed. She raised her camera, trying to capture the contours around the wreckage, and the flash illuminated the cracked skin, like the lines of broken ceramics. Li followed closely behind her, her eyes darting around and her palms already sweating. Zi Qing, stop turning on the flash, what if you alert something? Let's just walk a few steps, look for clues, and then turn around. Just listen to me, okay? There was a hint of trembling in her tone, and her usual energy of rational analysis seemed to be diluted in the mist. She fumbled for her phone, and there was only one signal bar left on the screen, which was intermittent. Not long after they left, the fog became thicker. The surrounding trees stood like ghosts, their branches and leaves intertwined into a network, and the sunlight was completely blocked, leaving only a gray glimmer. Ziqing stopped and adjusted the camera lens to focus on a bunch of twisted vines. When the shutter was pressed, she squinted at the screen. In the photo, there was an abnormal light and shadow behind the vines, like blue veins flickering. It was not soft like natural light, but sharp and beating, like a beating heart. Li, come here and take a look. This light, what is this? It was captured by the camera, but not seen by the naked eye. Ziqing put the screen in front of Li, her excitement mixed with a hint of chill. The light and shadow are elongated in the photo, as if there is something hiding behind the vines. The outline is blurry but full of menace. Li leaned closer, her brows knitted together. Impossible, this fog refracts light, right? But it looks like it's moving. Ziqing, let's stop taking pictures, something's wrong here. I always feel like someone is following us from behind. She turned to look at the way she came. She couldn't see anything clearly in the fog, but she heard the sound of tiny footsteps, as if someone was deliberately gentle, but deliberately let them notice. Her rationality began to waver, and the reports of disappearances on the internet flashed through her mind. Young girls walked into the foggy forest and never came out again. Stalking? Don't scare yourself, it could be a small animal. Zi Qing said, but subconsciously tightened her grip on the camera strap. She stepped forward bravely, trying to suppress her inner uneasiness with action. Come on, let's continue. If this light and shadow is a natural phenomenon, it will definitely be an exclusive material. Think about it, this can become the focus of our photography exhibition. Li bit her lip and followed, but her pace was much slower than before. You girl, you are always so optimistic. I remember when we were in college, we went to take pictures of that old temple. You insisted that there was inspiration in it, but you heard a strange noise in the middle of the night. I was so scared that I ran half a street with you in my arms. She tried to use memories to ease the atmosphere, but failed to cover up the tension in her voice. The footsteps sounded again, this time closer, like whispers behind the trees, mixed with slight gasps. Ziqing ignored it. She squatted down, pointed at a puddle on the ground, and pressed the shutter. The water reflects the mist, but there is a distorted shadow in the photo, not a tree shadow, but a human figure. Her vision blurred for a moment, and a strong hallucination suddenly flooded into her mind. In front of her, the reflection in the puddle was no longer her own, but her mother's face. It was the deceased mother. Her face was covered with wrinkles, her eyes were as empty as wreckage, and her mouth was open as if she was screaming silently. The mother stretched out her hand and crawled out of the water. Her skin was pale, and her elongated fingers grabbed Ziqing's ankle, which was as cold as a knife made of fog. Mom, Mom. Ziqing muttered to herself, her body stiffening. She felt loneliness coming like a tide. After her father left home, her mother always stayed alone in the empty home, and her crying in the middle of the night was like a needle piercing her heart. In the hallucination, her mother's face was distorted, turning into the remains of a corpse, with dead leaves spitting out of her mouth, and she was muttering, "Why did you leave me? Why did you run away alone?" Fear amplified everything, and Ziqing's breathing became rapid. She seemed to have returned to her childhood, in that dark room, with shadows creeping from the corners, swallowing up her loneliness. "Zi Qing. What's wrong with you? Your face is as white as a ghost." Li rushed over, grabbed her shoulders and shook her hard. "Wake up. That's an illusion. There's something wrong with this fog. Let's go right now." Li's voice pulled Zi Qing back. She blinked, and there were only ripples of fog left in the puddle. The inner monologue flashed by, "I can't stop, I have to record all this to prove that this is not a dream." Ziqing took a deep breath, the mist entered her lungs, and the coolness made her sober up. She stood up and wiped the cold sweat from her forehead. I saw my mother. She was blaming me for being lonely. Li, this fog is not simple, it is digging our brains." Her voice became firm. Although her hands were still shaking slightly, she raised her camera again and pointed at the puddles to take one last picture. "I have to record it. We can't just run away. This is our evidence." At this moment, she felt the courage sprouting in her heart, like the shutter of a camera, capturing the moment of fear and transforming it into strength. Li looked at her friend's eyes with worry and admiration. "You're so good, I'm about to collapse." "Okay, but we have to find an exit quickly." The footsteps came closer again, this time there seemed to be an extra pair, surrounding them. Li's rationality was completely shaken. She took Zi Qing's hand and said, "I feel like someone is staring at us, like eyes hidden behind a tree. Zi Qing, do you believe me? This is not a coincidence." At this moment, Ziqing's foot stepped on a loose stone, and the bushes nearby suddenly parted, revealing a hidden path. The path is covered with moss and winds downwards. The trees on both sides are sparse, and the outline of an abandoned building is vaguely revealed in front of it, broken walls and rusted iron doors, like an outpost or experimental cabin that has been forgotten for many years. The fog has become thinner on the trail, but the lingering blue light still shines in the photo. "Look! This is the road leading to that building." Ziqing pointed forward, excitement overcoming fear. "Li, let's go take a look. Maybe there are clues to explain the wreckage." She took a step forward. Li hesitated for a moment, but still followed. The trail is not long, but every step is thrilling. The shadows of the trees stretched in the fog, like fingers scratching the air. Li suddenly spoke in a low voice, as if she was talking to herself, "Zi Qing, you know? I also hide my worries. Remember why I am always so rational? When I was a child, my parents divorced, and I was thrown to my grandparents and spent the night alone in the shabby house in my hometown. Every time there was a thunderstorm, I felt like there was a ghost knocking on the window, which made me afraid to sleep. Later, I learned to analyze everything, just to not let fear control me." She paused and held Ziqing's hand tightly. "But now, this fog brings me back to that time. Thank you for holding me, otherwise I would have run away." Ziqing turned to look at her, her eyes shining with warmth. "Li, we are best friends. We have agreed since college to face it together. I am also a part of your trauma. After my mother left, I always felt like an orphan, and taking photos was just to fill that hole. But now, with you, I am not afraid." Their conversation was like a ray of light, piercing the fog and strengthening their bond. Li nodded, and the backpack on her shoulders became lighter. "Yes, together. Just like before, after taking photos, we went to eat hot pot and complain about this crazy day." At the end of the path, an abandoned building is in sight. The iron door was half open, and it was dark inside. There was a low hum, like a machine running. Ziqing raised her camera and prepared to take a picture, but she heard the footsteps behind her suddenly stop, replaced by a faint laughter, seeping out of the fog. A blue light flashed through the door of the building, illuminating the footprints on the ground, not theirs, but those of bare feet, twisted like claw marks. Zi Qing, there is something. Li whispered, the suspense in her voice was as thick as mist. They exchanged a look, pushed open the iron door, and stepped into the unknown shadow. The iron door made a harsh creaking sound in Ziqing's hand, like an old bone protesting against being disturbed. She and Li exchanged a look, and mist came out from the crack in the door, mixed with the pungent smell of chemicals. It was not the moisture of soil, but a mixture of metal and medicine. It was reminiscent of hospital disinfectant, but more eerie. Ziqing took a deep breath and opened the door. The buzzing inside immediately amplified, like countless bees flapping their wings inside the wall. She raised her camera and a flash illuminated the dust particles in the entrance, floating like ghosts. This place looks like an abandoned factory. Ray whispered, her voice echoing in the empty space. She was close to Ziqing, and the shoulder straps of her backpack were so tight that her palms ached. Ziqing, stop taking random pictures, let's explore the way first. If there is a landslide or something inside, we will be in trouble. Her eyes scanned the wall, and there were vague marks engraved on the mottled rust, like English abbreviations, SELAB, the code name of the laboratory. Ray's rational head began to spin, but fear held it back. Ziqing didn't stop. She took 2 steps forward. The cement floor was beneath her feet, and mold grew in the cracks, like green veins. Li, look at this buzzing sound, it's coming from below. Underground? There is something underneath this building. She squatted down, pointed at the ground and pressed the shutter. The cracks in the photo extended into a network, and a faint blue light showed through. She felt a surge of excitement surge into her heart, overpowering the afterglow of the hallucination just now. This was not a ghost from her childhood, this was a real clue that could fill the hole in her heart. Li pulled her sleeve. Underground entrance. It sounds like the opening of a horror movie. Your curiosity will kill the cat sooner or later. I remember when we were in college, we went to the abandoned mine to shoot night scenes. You insisted on exploring in and got lost for half an hour. I was so scared that I called the police. She tried to amuse her with old stories, but she heard another kind of noise mixed with the buzzing, ticking, like a leaking water pipe, but more regular, like a timer counting down. They groped along the wall. The space was not large, about 20 square feet, and was filled with rusty iron buckets and broken glass. The air was filled with a musty smell. Ziqing's camera lens swept across a table that had fallen to the ground, with yellowed papers scattered on it and scrawled writing, fog density increased, human body adaptability test. She frowned. Li, what is this? Scientific notes? This forest is not a natural phenomenon. Someone is doing something strange. There was a hint of determination in her voice, and the brave fire was ignited in her chest. She imagined that after returning home, she would develop these photos and hang them on the wall of the studio to prove that her adventure was not a delusion. Li leaned close to the paper and looked carefully through the light of her mobile phone. Zi Qing, this looks like an experimental record. Victim reaction, induced hallucination. Damn it, what the hell have we broken into? Her face turned pale, and the urban legend in the news flashed through her mind. In the disappearance case in the Edge Forest, witnesses always said they saw the shadow of a white coat. Li's rationality was on the verge of collapse. She grabbed Zi Qing's arm and said, let's go, now. This is beyond our control. Ziqing shook her head and locked her eyes on an iron ladder in the corner, hidden behind a false wall, leading downwards. The ladder was rusty, but the buzz was loudest from there. Li, just take a look. What if this is the exit? Maybe you can find a cell phone signal. She stepped onto the first step, and the iron ladder shook, making a whining sound of metal friction. Li hesitated for a moment, gritted her teeth and followed. You girl, you always drag me into the water. Okay, but after 5 minutes, I will drag you away. The ladder is not long, about 10 steps to the bottom, but the air is getting hotter and muggier, like mist in a steamer. Below is a narrow corridor with fluorescent light strips embedded in the wall. The blue light flickers and illuminates the duct system, thick pipes wind along the wall, condensation condenses on the surface, and a faint mist leaks from the joints. Ziqing's heartbeat accelerated, and she whispered, "This is artificial, Li. The fog is not natural, it comes from these tubes." The camera shutter clicked several times to capture the pulsation of the tubes, like a living creature breathing. At the end of the corridor is a metal door, ajar, with a bright blue light shining through the crack. When Li opened the door, her hands were shaking violently. "Ziqing, I have a bad feeling. Just like the ghost stories my grandfather told me when I was a kid, there are always monsters behind the door." The door opened, revealing a spacious basement with cold white lighting and a glass cabin in the center, like a freezing cabin in a science fiction movie, but instead of ice cubes, there was a turbid liquid soaked with human-shaped outlines. Ziqing gasped. In the first glass cabin, there was a man floating in the liquid. His skin was twisted like melted wax, his blood vessels bulged into a blue grid, his arms were elongated into claws, and his nails were as sharp as knives. His eyes were wide, his pupils dilated, bubbles were blowing from his mouth, and his face had an expression of eternal agony. A buzzing sound came from the machine in the cabin, and data jumped on the display. The mutation progress was 78%, and the fog was being injected. Ziqing's camera pressed the shutter almost automatically, and the flash reflected the details in the liquid. Something was crawling under the skin, like a parasite reshaping the bones. "Oh my God, is this a human experiment?" Ziqing murmured, her voice trembling, but she didn't retreat. She felt a shock like a wave, and her childhood fear of loneliness turned into anger at this moment. Who could do this to someone? Her courage was beginning to show. She took a step forward and focused the camera on the second cabin. The victim there was a woman, with hair floating like seaweed, her cheeks split open, revealing metal implants, and her eyes reflecting blue light, like a soul eroded by mist. "Ray, we have to record this, this is the evidence. We can't let this madness continue." Li's face was twisted, her legs were weak as she stared at the glass cabin. "Zi Qing, this is so disgusting. Those people, they are turning into monsters. Let's run and call the police." But before she could finish her words, the monitor in the corner of the room suddenly lit up and the red light flashed, capturing their figures. On the screen, a blurry man's face appeared, wearing goggles, and his smile was twisted like a crack. "Intruder. Interesting, new sample." The voice came from the speaker, low and hoarse, with the calmness of a scientist, but mixed with crazy excitement. "Su Feng, although they are not yet known to them, his outline is already visible, the pervert hidden under the white coat, with mist-like enthusiasm in his eyes." Who's talking?" Ziqing turned around, pointed the camera at the monitor, and pressed the shutter. The man, Su Feng, laughed loudly. "Welcome to my garden, ladies. The mist brought you here, didn't it? It always picks out curious souls." His voice echoed, and the pipe at the door suddenly hissed, and more mist spurted out, as thick as a smoke bomb, filling the room. Ziqing coughed and her vision blurred. "Li, don't inhale. This is hallucination gas." She held Li's hand and tried to retreat toward the door, but the mist had seeped into her lungs and the world began to distort. Li's eyes widened, and she saw that the woman in the glass cabin was not a stranger, but herself. Hallucinations came like a flood. She was tied up in the cabin, liquids soaked her body, her skin began to crack, and her bones stretched into monster claws. Her past emerged, the lonely night after her parents divorced. A ghost knocked on the door outside the window, and now the shadow turned into Su Feng's face, smiling and saying, "Join us, Li." "Reason? In the fog, it's just an illusion." Li screamed, shook off Zi Qing's hand, backed up and hit the wall. "No. Zi Qing, I saw myself becoming like that. It is transforming me, my skin is burning." Her voice was broken, her rationality completely collapsed, and she held her head in her hands, tears mixed with the mist and slipped down. Ziqing's heart sank, but she forced herself to focus. "Li. That's fake, listen to me. We are best friends. Remember when we were in college, we stayed up late together to edit photos and complain about the bad materials? This fog is lying to you. She rushed over, hugged Li's shoulders, and shook her hard. There was a flash in my heart. I can't let her get stuck in. I have to take her out. This is my responsibility. Zi Qing's bravery exploded at this moment. She turned around and looked at the monitor and shouted, "You pervert. Let her go, we didn't see anything." But Su Feng's laughter was even louder. "Brave little photographer. Come on, join the experiment. The fog will let you see the truth, the monster inside you." The pipe spewed more gas, the room lights flickered, and the victim in the glass cabin suddenly twitched, and the skin twisted further, making a wet tearing sound. Zi Qing pulled Li and rushed to the door. Li's hallucination was still there. She murmured, "Zi Qing, save me. I don't want to become a monster." The chase began. There were footsteps from behind. Wasn't it an hallucination? It was Su Feng's assistant. Maybe it was a mutant. Claw marks scratched the floor, and suspense followed. Ziqing's camera shook while running, and she turned around to take a picture. In the blue light, Su Feng's face was magnified on the screen, with pure madness in his eyes. They rushed out of the corridor, the ladder shaking under their feet, the mist chasing them, wrapping around them like a living thing. Li gasped, "Zi Qing, thank you. I almost believed that ghost." Zi Qing nodded, sweat dripping. "We have to escape, Li, tell everyone the secret of this forest." But outside the door, the fog became thicker, and there was a vague figure shaking. The chase was far from over. They finally climbed up the iron ladder and rushed out of the half-open door with staggering steps. The mist rushed towards their faces like cat's claws, instantly swallowing their vision. Ziqing was breathing heavily, leaning against the mottled wall, and the camera in her hand was still shaking slightly. "Li, we can't stop, that thing behind, it's chasing me." She turned around and saw a faint black shadow swaying at the door. It was not a human figure, but a twisted outline, like a monster that had just crawled out of the glass cabin. A humming sound came from the ground. Now it sounded more like a heartbeat, rapid and mocking. Li nodded, her face as pale as paper, and she wiped the sweat from her forehead, which was mixed with the moisture of the mist. "Ziqing, you pulled me just now. I thought I was really going to die." Those hallucinations were so real, like the ghosts and wolf howls I heard hiding in the closet when my parents quarreled when I was a child. She tried to force a smile, but the corners of her mouth twitched, and there were still fragments of fear in her eyes. "We have to find an exit. The fog in this damn place is getting more and more sticky. The passage is narrow and tortuous, and the pipes on the wall continue to wind. The mist leaks from the gaps, slowly extending like white tentacles." They groped forward hand in hand, their footsteps echoing on the cement floor, mixed with the sound of ticking in the distance. Was it water? Or a timer? The scene just now flashed through Ziqing's mind, the victims in the glass cabin, their skin melting like wax, and her heart tightened. "Li, listen, that's Su Feng. He is not an ordinary lunatic. He is using mist to control people's brains, and we have to stay awake. Do you remember that time we went to the cemetery to take a night scene? I was so scared that my legs were weak, and you laughed at me for being a coward, but you ran away first." She deliberately brought up old things, hoping to use the teasing between best friends to get Li's attention. Li chuckled, her voice hoarse. "Yes, your photo was taken as a ghost movie trailer, and the judges said you captured the trembling of the soul. But now, this is no joke, Zi Qing. I feel like fog is getting into my head, and my ears are buzzing." They turned a corner, and the passage suddenly bifurcated into two, one left and one right. The left side had a weak blue light, and the right side was as dark as ink. The fog became thicker, and there were only a few meters left in sight. There were faint footsteps approaching from behind. Su Feng? Or his work? "Damn it, let's break up." Ziqing cursed and stopped. She glanced at the two roads. On the left, there was a crack in the wall, revealing a faint light, perhaps an exit. On the right, it was as dark as a dead end. Li, you go left, and I'll explore the right. How about we meet at the fork in 10 minutes? We can't be blocked together. Her voice was firm, although there was a twinge in her heart. Separation means doubling the risk, but staying and waiting to die is even more stupid. Li hesitated and grabbed Zi Qing's arm. Zi Qing, are you crazy? Let's walk to the left together, what if it's a trap? But the footsteps behind her were closer, like claws scraping against metal, sharp and harsh. Li gritted her teeth, okay, but you promise me not to act like a hero. Just shout and I'll be back. They hugged, and Li's body temperature was scalding, like mist burning her skin. Li turned around and got into the passage on the left, walking away. Ziqing, be careful. Ziqing faced the darkness on the right alone. She took a deep breath. The mist hit her nose, with a chemically sweet taste, like the inferior syrup she drank as a child. The passage was so narrow that she could only walk sideways. She raised her camera and turned on the flashlight mode. The blue light swept across the wall, reflecting scrawled graffiti, "Rebirth in the fog, monsters reborn." Her heartbeat accelerated, and a picture suddenly flashed in her mind, not the present, but the past. The hallucinations came, flooding in like a tidal wave. She saw her college graduation show. The lights in the studio were dazzling, and the judges shook their heads and sighed. Zi Qing, your photos are too ordinary and soulless. Curiosity? That's just self-deception. A sharp voice sounded, and it was the instructor's face, twisted into the look of Su Feng, with blue light flashing in his eyes. She stood in the empty exhibition hall, with her work scattered on the ground, blurry forest photos, ghosts hidden in the fog, but the judges said that it was a failure and a dream that she could never catch up with. Ziqing's hands trembled, and the camera slipped from her fingers and shattered on the ground. No, this is not true. She murmured, sweating on her forehead, and the hallucinations magnified the cracks in her heart. In those years, in order to prove herself, she broke into countless dangerous places, but always backed down at critical moments, like a coward. There was a flash in my heart, I can't fall down, Li is still waiting for me. This is not the past, this is the fog lying to me. I have to prove that I'm not a loser. Ziqing clenched her fists hard, her nails digging into her palms, and the pain brought her back to reality. She picked up the camera and pressed the shutter. The flash of light pierced the illusion, and the exhibition hall shattered into pieces, revealing the real passage. Fuck your nightmare, she growled, rushing forward with firm steps. Bravery was no longer a fire, but a blazing fire. She began to actively scan her surroundings, looking for clues, a scratch on the wall, fresh, like the one left by Li's nails. At the same time, Li staggered forward in the left passage, the mist wrapping around her ankles like silk threads, making every step heavy. She gasped, Zi Qing, where are you? The voice echoed through the walls, but only a buzzing echo came back. At the end of the passage was a small door, ajar, with blue light spilling out of it. She pushed the door open, and inside was a small room filled with instruments. Standing in the center was a man, Su Feng. His white coat was stained with stains, and his eyes behind the goggles were shining with enthusiasm. Little girl, you came so quickly. Su Feng turned around, his smile widening like a crack. He held a sprayer in his hand. He pressed it lightly, and more mist sprayed out, filling the room. Mist likes you like this. There is weakness hidden under the rational shell. Come, sit down and chat. His voice was low, like the whisper of a hypnotist, with the calmness of a scientist, but with a perverted excitement. Li took a step back and hit the door frame. You are the pervert. Let us go, this experiment is a crime. Her voice trembled, and the trauma in her mind was like a flood. The night her parents divorced, she curled up on the bed and heard the argument outside the door. Her father's shadow stretched into a monster, and her mother's cry turned into a scream. Now, the shadow reappeared. Su Feng's face was superimposed on his father's body, and he said with a smile, Li, you always hide, right? Lonely girl, the mist will give you a family, a mutated family. Join me, and you will no longer be alone. In the hallucination, she saw her childhood room, with blue liquid seeping from the walls, and her parents crawling out of the mist, their skin twisted, and stretched out their hands. "Daughter, let's play experiments." Lee screamed, her knees weakened, and she knelt on the ground. "No. Get away. You monster." She held her head, tears falling down, and her skin felt faintly hot, as if something was crawling underneath. Su Feng came closer, squatted down, and touched her shoulder gently. "It's useless to resist, the mist has entered your body. Look, your veins are turning blue." He laughed, controlled the sprayer, the mist became thicker, and Li's vision was blurred. She murmured, "Zi Qing, help me. I feel something is wrong." On her arms, tiny blue veins bulged and glowed slightly, signs of slight mutation, and there were needles wandering under the skin. Ziqing waited for a long time at the meeting point at the fork, but her heart sank when she didn't see Li come back. She turned around and rushed into the left passage, groping along the wall, and found the scratch, Li's fingernail mark, pointing to the small door. "Li!" she shouted, pushing open the door, and the mist hit her face. The scene in front of her froze her. Li was kneeling on the ground, Su Feng was leaning next to her, and the sprayer was buzzing. "Let her go. You lunatic." Ziqing rushed forward, her camera flashing in an attempt to dispel the fog. Su Feng turned his head and narrowed his eyes. "Here we go again, brave photographer. Your friend has begun to transform, look at her arms, the gift of the mist." Li raised her head, her eyes were red and swollen, and her voice was weak. "Ziqing. I saw my parents, they turned into monsters. My skin is so itchy, am I going to change too?" Her sleeves were rolled up, revealing a slight crack, and blue light seeped out of it, like blood vessels being reshaped. "Ziqing's heart is like a knife, and the friendship crisis is like a sharp knife hanging over the ceiling. Is Li's change real or an illusion?" She questioned, "Is the fog playing with us in all this?" But she couldn't hesitate, the flame of growth burst out in her chest, and she became an active survivor. "Li, stare at me. That's fake. We are best friends. From college to now, no one can change us." She took Li's hand, dragged her back hard, and yelled at Su Feng, "You think the mist can control everything? Wrong, we will ruin your experiment." Su Feng laughed and sprayed out more mist. "Try it, miss. The forest is mine, and the illusion will engulf you." The lights in the room flickered, Li's breathing intensified, and Zi Qing felt reality shaking on the edge. Footsteps started again from behind, and a monster-like shadow approached. The terror erupted like a climax. They retreated and ran, the mist lingering, and Li's whisper echoed, "Zi Qing, don't leave me." At the end of the passage, a faint light loomed, but the sound of chasing claws was getting closer and closer, like an invitation from hell. Ziqing held Li's arm tightly, as if holding on to the last life-saving straw, and the two of them stumbled towards the glimmer of light at the end of the passage. The sound of claws exploded behind them, like the sharp teeth of beasts grinding metal. The mist wrapped around their legs stickily, and every step felt like stepping on cotton. Li's steps were frivolous, her half-awake eyes narrowed into slits, and she murmured, "Zi Qing, my parents, they are laughing at me." Her arms were still slightly hot, and the crack of blue light pulsed faintly, making Zi Qing's heart clench. "Shut up, Li. That's a lie, listen to me." Ziqing growled, her voice filled with anger. She pulled hard, and the two of them jumped into the dim light. It turned out to be an old iron door, leading to the forest outside. As soon as the door was closed, most of the buzzing sound was cut off, but the sound of claws scraping the door panel was still there, making Ziqing's gums numb. She turned around and supported Li. Li's face was as pale as a ghost, beads of sweat rolled down her forehead, mixed with the salty smell of mist. "Hold on, we have to run, that madman Su Feng won't let go easily." The forest rushed towards me, and the fog became thicker. It was like a layer of white gauze wrapping the tree trunks, and the branches and leaves whispered in the wind, which sounded like ridicule. They rushed forward one step at a time, with Ziqing's camera dangling in front of her chest. Occasionally, it flashed, illuminating the twisted shadows of trees on the roadside. Was it a tree, or something squirming? Li's breathing became weaker and weaker, and she leaned on Zi Qing's shoulder. My legs are weak, and I feel like something is crawling. Zi Qing, didn't you say when you were a child that if you are afraid of the dark, just imagine your mother's arms? Now I miss home so much. Her voice was broken, with a fragility rarely seen in ordinary times, which made Zi Qing's nose sore. Home. We are going through hell right now, bestie. Ziqing forced a smile as her mind flashed back to the nights when the two of them stayed in the dormitory in college, eating spicy hot pot from a roadside stall and complaining about her boyfriend. At that time, Li was always a rational person, analyzing the composition of each photo, but now she is like a lost child. Look, there's a hole ahead. Hide inside and take a breather first. She pointed to a crack half a person's height under the rock wall. It was pitch black, but it was better than being exposed to the fog. The sound of claws still echoed in the distance, and Su Feng's laughter came faintly, like a ghost's tale. The two squeezed into the cave. It was damp and cold inside, and the ground was covered with fallen leaves and moss. Ziqing scanned the cave with the light of her camera to confirm that there were no living creatures, and then she breathed a sigh of relief. She placed Li in the corner, took off her coat and put it under her. Li, wake up, tell me how you feel. Does your arm still hurt? Li blinked, and her consciousness gradually returned. She rubbed her temples and tried to sit up straight. Zi Qing, thank you for pulling me out. Come on. I thought I was going to be like something in those glass cabins. My skin was itchy as if there were bugs in it, but now, it seems to have calmed down a bit. She rolled up her sleeves, and the crack became fainter, but the veins were still faintly blue, like a thin snake lurking. Ziqing squatted beside her and held her hand. Li's body temperature came from her palm, and there was a tremor in the warmth. You scared me to death. The look in Su Feng's eyes just now was like tasting prey. We have to find a way. This fog is not a natural phenomenon. It is messing with our brains. The two of them looked at each other. The wind howled outside the cave, and the fog seeped in through the cracks, like white fingers testing. Friendship is like a rope at this moment, binding them tighter. They used to be best friends who complained about each other, but now they are comrades who depend on each other for life and death. Li took a deep breath and tried to regain her usual rationality. She patted Zi Qing on the shoulder. Okay, don't panic yet. My mind is still functioning. This mist smells like a chemical, like the reagent I smelled when I went to the laboratory last time to shoot a documentary. It's not an ordinary mist, it must be a chemical weapon created by Su Feng to control people's nerves. Magnify the fear. Fear makes us collapse. Remember? When we went to Huangshan to shoot the fog scene, you said the fog was like a fairyland, and I said it was air pollution. Now think about it, the fog here is the ultimate in pollution. It is specially used to induce hallucinations and test the limits of the human body. Her analysis was clear and logical, and it was like a knife, cutting through the fog of fear. Ziqing nodded, feeling warm in her heart. Li's sobriety was like a beacon. Yes, you make sense. Su Feng's pervert is not just playing around, he has a plan. Those glass cabins, those monsters, what are they for? She began to take the initiative, no longer a passive victim, but an investigator. She scanned the cave with the light of her camera, looking for clues, her steps a little lighter. We can't sit still and wait for death. We have to dig out his details. Li, you rest while I look around. The cave was not deep, but there was a small groove at the back. Ziqing crawled over and touched a pile of wet papers with her fingers, a broken diary with moldy corners and scrawled writing. She picked up a page and leaned closer to the light. Li, come here and take a look. This is a diary. Li moved over and the two of them read it carefully. The mist hovered at the entrance of the cave, as if they were eavesdropping. The diary reads, My name is Meng Qi. I thought it was romantic to come to this forest to take a wedding dress, but I fell into hell. Su Feng caught me and said that the fog was his masterpiece, a nanoscale chemical fog that can reshape the brain and transform humans to adapt to the new world. He dreamed of building a fog empire. After mutated humans, they would not be afraid of pollution or fear, and would only listen to his orders. Those experiments, the skin melted, and the brain grow blue silk and become a monster slave. I escaped, but hallucinations chased me, and the ghosts of childhood turned into claws. He said that the fog will make us reborn, but it will be an eternal prisoner. The page tore, the back was blurry, but Ziqing's heartbeat accelerated. Meng Qi, that mysterious woman? She is a survivor. Su Feng's plan is to transform humans to adapt to his fog world. Oh my god, this madman wants to be a god. Li's eyes widened, and her rational analysis suddenly turned into shock. Ziqing, this explains everything. The mist not only controls, but also changes DNA, mutating people into his adapters. My arm is the beginning. We have to destroy the source, otherwise the entire forest, and even the edge of the city, will become his playground. The two of them clasped their hands, and there was a hint of firmness in Li's voice. I always said you were too adventurous in the past, but now I am with you. Best friends do not lose best friends, we will investigate to the end. Ziqing nodded, and the fire of growth surged in her chest, from a curious photographer to a warrior who took the initiative to reveal the secret. She stuffed the diary into her pocket. Okay, let's stabilize first. Li, you analyze the weakness of the fog, and I'll take some evidence. Su Feng thought we were prey. Wrong, we are hunters. But as soon as she finished speaking, the fog surged outside the cave, and a low roar came, like a monster sniffing. Ziqing's mind suddenly went dark, and hallucinations came like a tide. This time it's not the failures of the past, but a deeper scar, the fear of childhood bereavement. The picture was distorted, and she saw the afterimages of her childhood home and her parents after the car accident, crawling out of the fog. The father's face melted into blue liquid, and he stretched out his hand. Ziqing, why don't you save us? Your curiosity is killing us. The mother's voice turned into a scream, and she transformed into a monster with claws like tree roots, chasing her through the forest. The cave became a cemetery, and fallen leaves buried them like grave soil. No. Mom and Dad, it was an accident that you left. Ziqing held her head and backed away, bumping into Li's arms. Her inner monologue flashed. This fear is like a chain, I have to break it, for Li and myself. Li shook her hard. Zi Qing. Wake up, it's the fog that's lying to you. Look at me, I'm here, we're facing it together. Remember the first photo you took when you were a child? Your parents smiled and praised you for your talent. Now, they will hope that you are brave. Her words were like an anchor, pulling Ziqing back. Ziqing gasped and opened her eyes, the monster shattered into mist. Li. Thank you. They always dig old wounds, but we have each other. The friendship deepened, like a shield blocking the storm. The roar outside the cave was approaching, and Ziqing grabbed the camera. We have to move. The diary said that Meng Qi escaped, maybe she is still nearby. Su Feng's plan can't work, let's investigate the source of his base. They climbed out of the cave, and there were faint footsteps in the mist. Was it Su Feng or Meng Qi's shadow? The suspense is like a web, tightening layer by layer, and Ziqing's determination is like a sharp blade, cutting the way forward. Ziqing's feet stepped on the soft fallen leaves, making a muffled crunching sound with every step, as if someone's bones were being crushed. She took Li's hand, and the two of them moved forward against the rock wall. The mist came out of the gaps in the trees like living creatures and wrapped around their ankles. The footsteps just now still echoed in their ears, intermittent, as if someone was deliberately teasing them. Ziqing's heart was pounding, and she whispered, Li, did you hear that? That sound, you have to be careful. That guy Su Feng must be hanging around. Ray nodded, but her hands suddenly softened and her grip weakened. Her face was so pale in the fog, and her eyes were flashing with confusion. Zi Qing. I feel so dizzy. The hallucination just now came again, as if something was crawling in my head. She stopped and leaned against a twisted tree trunk, panting and rolling up her sleeves. The blue crack lit up again, pulsing faster, like a living insect crawling under the skin. This fog, it's eating me. The shadows of my parents have appeared again. They said I should stay and stay with them forever. Her voice trembled, and her usual rationality was like smoke blown away by the wind. Zi Qing's heart sank, and she squeezed Li's hand tightly. Don't listen to those nonsense. That's Su Feng's trick, the mist is playing tricks. I remember when we were in college, you always said that hallucinations are brain short-circuit, just drink a cup of hot chocolate. It's the same now, we have to move forward and look for Meng Qi's trace. She tried to use her memories to regain Li's attention, remembering that the two of them stayed up late watching horror movies in the dormitory, and Li always laughed at her for being timid, and now the roles were reversed. Ziqing helped Li continue to move forward, but the footsteps were getting closer and closer, coming from the fog on the left, mixed with deep breathing. Who's there? Ziqing yelled, and the camera's flash lit up, piercing the fog and revealing a vague outline, a tall, thin figure wearing a torn cloak, with messy hair hanging down. The figure paused for a moment, then slowly approached, his voice hoarse as if squeezed out of his throat. Don't be afraid. I'm Meng Qi. The diary, you picked it up, right? Zi Qing's head buzzed, and she instinctively blocked Li. Meng Qi. Prove it to me. Su Feng has many tricks up his sleeve. Meng Qi's face emerged from the fog, pale and distorted, with sunken eyes like two black holes. She stretched out her hand, holding a piece of crumpled paper in her palm. This is the map. The core of Su Feng's base is where the fog is thickest. The source of the blue nanofog is there. Destroy it and everything will be over. Her movements were strange, her head tilted slightly, as if she was listening to some invisible voice, and there was a smile hanging on the corner of her mouth, which made Zi Qing's spine shiver. Li suddenly trembled and murmured, Zi Qing, she looks like my mother. Why does her mother smile so weirdly? Zi Qing glanced at her, Li's pupils dilated, and the blue light on the cracks made her face look like a will-o'-the-wisp. Li, concentrate. Ziqing growled, turning to Meng Qi, how do you know we have a diary? Tell me your story to prove that you are not hallucinating. Meng Qi's eyes flashed, she squatted down, her voice was low, like telling a ghost story. I was originally a bride, came to this forest to take wedding photos, and got lost as soon as the fog enveloped me. Su Feng took me into the laboratory, where the glass cabin was like a coffin. He said that the fog was his child, nanoparticles, mixed with neurotoxins, that can get into the brain and amplify your deepest fears. Not Jane. A simple hallucination, it rewrites your neural circuits and makes fear a reality. She paused, pointing to her arm, a scar turned faintly blue. He injected me with blue silk, saying it was evolution, allowing humans to adapt to the world of fog. Not afraid of pollution, not afraid of death. Just listen to his orders. My fear is that my childhood has been abandoned, and the fog has turned it into a monster, countless hands reaching out from the ground, pulling me down. My skin melts, my brain grows tentacles, I scream and escape, but the hallucinations still chase me, like a shadow. Ziqing felt chilled when she heard that. Excerpts from the diary flashed through her mind, so the fog is a science fiction trick. Nanoparticles control the brain and amplify fear to test mutations. A flash in her mind, this sounds too real, but what if it is a trap? Meng Qi nodded and handed over the map. Yes, it not only amplifies fear, but also customizes illusions based on your weaknesses. Su Feng wants to use this to build his empire, and humans will become slaves. I will give you the map, and you will destroy the source. But be careful, the fog will make you doubt everything, including me. Her smile reappeared, and she glanced at Li, your friend, she can't hold it anymore. Li suddenly let out a groan, her hand slipped from Zi Qing's palm, and she staggered back a few steps. Zi Qing. I saw home, my parents are waiting for me at the door. There is a road in the fog, leading home. Her eyes were out of focus, and blue light came out of the cracks, like flames licking her skin. She turned around and ran, plunging into the depths of the mist. Her steps were messy, as if she was being pulled by something. Li! Stop! Ziqing shouted and chased her, but Mengqi grabbed her. Don't chase her. It's her hallucination pulling her, and the core of the fog will swallow her. You have to go to the source first, otherwise she will never come back. Ziqing broke away, her heart pounding. Let go. How do you know? Li is my best friend, I can't leave her. She rushed into the fog. Mengqi's voice echoed behind her. Map. Follow it, the fog will lie to you, but the truth is at the core. Ziqing's vision was blurred, and Li's shadow swayed ahead and disappeared into the shadow of the trees. She pushed forward alone, the mist squeezing in like an invisible wall, and every breath she took felt like swallowing rust. Footsteps started again, this time from all directions, mixed with Li's scream, Zi Qing, help me, they are biting me. Terror surged in like a tide, and Ziqing's mind suddenly became distorted. A lonely vision struck her, not the loss of a relative in childhood, but a deeper emptiness. She saw herself walking alone in the endless mist, and Li's face emerged from the tree, mocking, you always drag me down, Ziqing. Since college, your adventures have made me suffer. Now, I am free, and you? You will always be alone. In the illusion, Li's shadow Zi stretched out his hand, and it turned into blue silk, and the trees bent down and whispered, no one believes you, no one needs you. Su Feng is right, you are a perfect sample, forever trapped in fear. Zi Qing squatted down with her head in her arms, and her inner monologue was as short as lightning, this is my weakness, loneliness. But Li needs me and I can't fail. She took a deep breath, gritted her teeth and stood up, screw your illusions. Li, I'm here to find you. She took out Mengqi's map. The paper was slightly hot in her hands, and the blue lines pointed to the core of the fog, a hidden cave, marked, source, nano furnace. Doubts gnaw like insects, is Mengqi real? Or is it Su Feng's bait? But she had no time to hesitate and moved forward alone, her steps firm. In the mist, claws sounded again, and Li's screams were intermittent, as if to lure her deeper into a trap. Ziqing's camera flashed, revealing traces on the roadside, Li's shoe prints, mixed with blue slime. She quickened her pace, the fire in her heart burning brightly. In the past, she always relied on Li's rational support, but now it's my turn to take charge alone. Su Feng, just wait, I will dismantle your mist empire. Deep into the core of the fog, the air becomes sticky, like breathing glue. The shadow of the tree twisted into a human form and poked her with his finger, Lone Ranger. Ha, you will become a monster soon. Ziqing ignored them, Mengqi's words echoed in her mind, the fog amplifies fear, but courage can tear it apart. She murmured to herself, Li, hold on. I am no longer a victim, I am here to destroy everything. Suddenly, the fog in front opened, and a blue light flashed, like an enlarged version of Li's crack. The suspense hangs like a knife, is that the trace of Li, or is it a greater horror? Ziqing held the map tightly and rushed over, her determination like steel cutting through the white gauze of the road ahead. Ziqing's footsteps made water stains in the fog, and the blue light pulsated in front of her, like an unstable heart. She panted, the map felt hot in her palms, and the blue lines curved towards the light source. The shadows of the trees stretched into claws, clawing at the air, but she gritted her teeth and moved forward, with only Li's scream echoing in her mind. Li. You're right in front, right? She whispered, her voice mostly swallowed up by the fog. The blue light suddenly expanded, and the mist seemed to be blown open by the wind, revealing a hidden cave entrance. The rocks around the cave entrance were covered with blue vines, pulsating with weak electric light. Ziqing's heart beat faster. Is this the origin of the map? She crouched down and hid behind the bushes, her ears catching the whispers and mechanical buzzing coming from inside. Come in, Ziqing. Can you smell that smell? The aroma of science. A familiar voice floated out of the cave, hoarse and mocking, it was Su Feng. Ziqing froze, she didn't make a sound, but the mist seemed to have eyes, conveying her position. She took a deep breath, took out her camera, turned it to silent mode, and pointed the lens at the hole. Curiosity was like a fire, burning her fingers and trembling, but she forced herself to calm down. She couldn't be impulsive, she had to see clearly first. The map says that this is the edge of the laboratory, and the source is deeper. She crawled a few steps closer, the mist licking her skin, causing a tingling sensation. The blue light in the cave reflects a glass wall, followed by several transparent cabins, like freezers in science fiction movies. Ziqing squinted her eyes and saw a woman tied up in the cabin, her skin covered with blue silk, and something was being injected into her. Su Feng stood nearby, his tall and thin figure elongated under the light. He wore goggles and hummed a ditty, "Add a little more dose and you will be perfect. The mist will make you reborn, no longer afraid of dirty air, no longer afraid of loneliness. Come, tell me, your fears, what is it?" The woman screamed, her voice distorted, "Don't. I saw the children, they are crying. Let me out." Su Feng laughed and pressed the button, blue mist sprayed from the roof of the cabin, the woman's body twitched, and her skin began to bulge, as if it was about to burst. Ziqing's stomach churns, she presses the shutter button, and the camera records everything silently. The camera captured Su Feng's face, his eyes flashing with fanaticism. Human beings are too fragile. This mist is my masterpiece, nanoparticles mixed with nerve remodeling agents. It not only amplifies fear, but also rewrites DNA, turning you into my guards. Think about it, a world that is not afraid of pollution, all under my command. Those government fools think this is it a climate experiment? Ha, they don't know, I'm building an empire here. He turned to another cabin, where a man had been semi-mutated, with tentacles growing out of his arms, and murmured, "Master." I heard it, fear, turned into strength. Su Feng patted the cabin wall, "Yes, that's it. Your weakness is my weapon." Ziqing's head was buzzing. This guy's motive turned out to be crazy ambition. Build an empire. She quickly adjusted the focus with her fingers and took more details. The label on the cabin read, "Fear conversion rate 95%, and the instruments on the wall showed the location of the nano furnace, which was deep in the cave. She thought to herself, this is enough evidence, it needs to be spread. But the fog suddenly thickened. As if in response to Su Feng's words, Ziqing's vision blurred, and an illusion came like a tide. She saw Li crawling out from the shadow of the tree, but it was not the original Li. Her skin cracked, and blue threads burst out from the cracks, turning into a writhing monster with eyes as red as blood. "Zi Qing, why did you leave me? Look, I have become stronger. Are you brave? You're just deceiving yourself. You always relied on me, now I'm going to eat you." The monster Li rushed over, and its tentacles were cold and sticky, amplifying the fear in her heart. Losing Li is equivalent to losing all support. "No. This is not true." Ziqing growled, holding her head and retreating. Her inner monologue was like lightning. "Loneliness is coming again, but this time I have to fight with my brain, not act recklessly." She pinched her arm hard, and the pain brought her back to reality, and the image of Monster Ray shattered into mist. She gasped and climbed up, the camera still in her hand. The blue light in the lens reminded her, Li was still alive and she had to be saved. Suddenly, a hand was put on her shoulder from the side. Ziqing was so frightened that she almost screamed. She turned around and saw Meng Qi, her pale face emerging from the fog. "Found it. The source is inside. The nano furnace is like a big blue heart. Destroy it and the fog will dissipate." Meng Qi's voice was low, but her eyes flashed with a blue light, and her head tilted slightly, as if she was following instructions. Ziqing instinctively stepped back and held the camera tightly. "How did you come here? Were you the one who heard the footsteps just now?" Meng Qi smiled, and the smile was so weird that it made people hairy. "I will follow the map and help you. Su Feng's fog can't control me completely. I escaped once." She stretched out her hand and pointed to the cave. "Go in quickly, I will cover." But Ziqing's intuition sounded like an alarm bell, and she caught a glimpse of the scar on Mengqi's arm turning blue, pulsing like Li's crack. Cover. Or lead me in? Ziqing asked in a low voice, replaying Meng Qi's smile just now in her mind. It was not a smile of help, it was controlled. You say you are a survivor, but why are there blue lights in your eyes? Su Feng is controlling you, right? Meng Qi's face twisted for a moment, and she suddenly grabbed Zi Qing's arm with surprising strength. Don't doubt me. I'm here to help. But sometimes, a voice rings in my head, saying that I want to take the sample back. Her voice was broken, and the blue light in her eyes lit up. Su Feng implanted blue silk in me. It is like a parasite, amplifying my fear of being abandoned. So I have to be obedient, otherwise it will make me melt. She let go of her hand, squatted down and gasped, but I hate him. I gave you the map just to destroy everything. Trust me once, Zi Qing. Let's go in together, you take the evidence, and I will tell you how to destroy the furnace. Zi Qing's heart was beating like a drum, and the betrayal was like a knife, but she looked at the struggle in Meng Qi's eyes and had a brief inner monologue. Is she an ally or a trap? But there is no time to guess, so you have to gamble with your wisdom. Her bravery is no longer a blind dash, but a calculation. Okay, tell me how to do it. Ziqing lowered her voice and the two of them snuck into the cave wall. The mechanical sound in the fog was louder, and Su Feng's humming echoed, come on, new samples, fear is a gift. Ziqing's camera took continuous shots, recording the victims in the cabin. A girl's face melted into blue pulp, a boy's eyes grew tentacles, screaming, Master, I saw, endless fog. Meng Qi whispered, the furnace is at its end. Head, press the red emergency valve, it will overload. But be careful, touching the blue silk will cause hallucinations. She led the way, but her pace suddenly slowed down, and she murmured, no, the voice said, take her back. Zi Qing was alert and pushed her away, Mengqi, wake up. Is your fear of abandonment? Then don't betray me, let's end this together. Meng Qi shook, and the blue light dimmed, yes, it's over. They rounded a corner, and the nano-furnace came into view, a huge blue sphere, with pipelines covering the surface, buzzing like a honeycomb. Su Feng's back was in front of him. He turned around and his eyes behind the goggles lit up, oh. The guests are here. Meng Qi, you did a good job and brought new toys. Meng Qi's body stiffened, blue silk sprang out from her arms, she turned to Zi Qing, her voice was mechanical, sample, capture. Zi Qing's heart sank to the bottom, the betrayal came true, but she did not panic, photography skills flashed in her mind, light and shadow are the key. She raised the camera, and the flash exploded, shining directly into Su Feng's eyes, fuck your empire. The white light pierced the fog, Su Feng cursed and covered his eyes, and Meng Qi's blue silk was temporarily frozen. Ziqing rushed towards the stove, while Meng Qi struggled behind, run. I can't hold on. Ziqing's hand touched the red valve, but the hallucination struck again, Li's monster image reappeared, and its tentacles wrapped around her, if you destroy the source, I will always be a monster. Fear amplified, Ziqing's vision shook, and she said in her heart, the pain of losing Li is the deepest, but wisdom tells me that this is false. You have to trust yourself. She turned the valve hard, the stove screamed, and the blue mist began to billow, swallowing up the entire cave. Su Feng's laughter rang out, stupid. Do you think destroying a stove is enough? Fog is everywhere. Dan Ziqing grabbed the map, stuffed it into the memory card of the camera, turned around and pulled Mengqi, let's go. The evidence is in my hand, your blue silk will be broken. The sound of the cave entrance collapsing sounded, and the mist roared like an angry beast. Ziqing and Mengqi stumbled out, and blue light exploded behind them. Li's screams came from a distance, intermittently, Zi Qing, here. Zi Qing's determination was aroused like a new fire, evidence is a weapon. Now, she must use her wisdom to retrieve Li and expose all Su Feng's lies. Ziqing's lungs felt as if they were stewed by mist, and every breath brought a blue sting. She pulled Meng Qi's arm, and the two of them staggered out of the collapsed hole. The blue light behind them roared like a wild beast, and gravel and mist flew everywhere. Li's screams were still echoing in her ears, intermittent, like a signal torn apart by the wind. Zi Qing, deep down, save me. Zi Qing wiped the dirt from her face and stared straight ahead. The fog became thicker, and the outline of the base was faintly revealed, a row of low steel buildings covered with vine-like pipelines, like living creatures breathing. That voice is Li. Ziqing gasped and turned to look at Meng Qi. Meng Qi's face was as pale as paper, and the blue threads on her arms were still twitching slightly. She gritted her teeth and nodded. Yes, she is deep in the main base. The furnace that was destroyed just now was only on the edge, and the source is still inside. The heart of Su Feng's empire is in the underground. Meng Qi's voice was intermittent, and the blue light in her eyes flickered in and out, as if she was fighting something. We can't stop, we have to infiltrate. I know the back door, the exhaust pipe on the east side. Ziqing's heart sank. The betrayal just now was still swirling in her mind, but Li's scream was like a rope, pulling her forward. Are you sure? You almost sold me last time. She asked in a low voice, holding the camera tightly in her hand and pointing the lens in the direction of the base. The mist licked the exterior walls of the building, making a corrosive sound. Meng Qi smiled bitterly and rubbed the scar on her arm. That Lancy is making trouble again, but listen, I'm not a monster. My fear is to leave everything and run away, but if you give me a hand, I have to return it. Li is in the transformation cabin deep inside, she won't last long. Let's go, no then we will all become his toys. She took the lead, and the two of them crawled close to the trees. A patrolling shadow loomed in the fog, not a human, but a half-man, half-animal thing with tentacles on its arms, muttering, Master, fear, gift. The exhaust pipe on the east side is hidden behind vines, and the opening is big enough for someone to get through. Ziqing climbed in first. It was so hot inside that it felt like entering the throat of a giant beast. Blue liquid was condensing on the wall of the tube and dripping down. She wiped the camera with her sleeve. This place seems alive. Mengqi, how did you escape before? Mengqi followed, her voice muffled. Last time I pretended to be dead. Lancy relaxed a little. But now, it's calling me to go back. Quick, turn left, it will lead to the control room. The air in the tube became more and more stuffy. Ziqing's head began to feel dizzy, and the mist seeped in from the gaps, touching her thoughts like invisible tentacles. Suddenly, hallucinations hit me like a tsunami. This time it is not a single image, but all the fears superimposed and relived. Ziqing saw herself as a child, hiding under the quilt and listening to her parents quarrel, loneliness swallowing her like a black hole. Then the failed exhibition in college, the audience laughed at her photos as too naive and unrealistic, and then the day she entered the forest, Li smiled and said, we are the strongest partners, but now Li's face twisted and turned into a monster, tentacles stretched out from the mouth. You are always holding me back, Ziqing. Why don't you give up on me? Look, I'm free. In the hallucination, the walls of the base melted into blue pulp, and mutant guards came from all directions. Their eyes were her lenses, flashing the word, coward. Ziqing squatted down with her head in her arms, and her knees hit the wall of the pipe, causing her to burst into tears. No. Stop, I'm not. Her voice trembled, her eyes swayed, and she almost collapsed. Fear wrapped around her heart like a vine, and she wanted to scream and escape to a coffee shop in the city and forget all this madness. Zi Qing. Hey, wake up. Meng Qi's voice sounded from the side. She slapped Zi Qing's shoulder hard as waking up a sleepwalker. This is the trick of the mist. Nanoparticles are running around in the brain. It amplifies your weaknesses, but you have me and Li, remember? You pulled me last time, and I'm pulling you now. Take a deep breath, count to 3, and tell me what your fear is. Meng Qi's eyes stared at her, and the blue light dimmed a little, as if she was suppressing her own struggle. Ziqing gasped, and the image of Li flashed in her mind, not a monster, but the real Li, handing her hot chocolate in the cafe. idiot, let's go together, who is afraid of whom? That support was like a warm current, dispersing the blue mist. She had a brief inner monologue, fear is an old wound, but Li is my anchor. I have to become stronger, not for myself, but for her. My fear is to leave my friends behind. But I won't run away again. She got up and wiped away her tears. Thanks, Mengqi. Keep walking, we will ruin this damn place. The two climbed out of the pipe and fell into a dark corridor. The inside of the base is like a maze, with blue pipes crawling on the walls and buzzing constantly. Ziqing raised the camera and took several pictures, a victim in the cabin, with bubbles on his skin and blue threads burrowing into the bone marrow like worms. The man screamed, I see my family, they are laughing at me for turning into a monster. The instrument next to it showed, transformation progress, 78%, a horror upgrade from science fiction, and the air was filled with the smell of metal and blood. Meng Qi pointed forward, the gas valve is over there, the red one. Turn it away, and it will release the backlash fog, causing chaos in the entire layer. But Su Fengfeng noticed it. They moved forward close to the wall, their steps as light as cats. Suddenly, the alarm blared, and Su Feng's voice came from the speaker, hoarse and smiling, little mice, welcome to the Empire. Mengqi, are you rebelling again? Lancy, activate. Mengqi's body stiffened, and the blue silk on her arms burst out, she growled, damn it. Death, it's coming again. But Ziqing didn't retreat, pulling her towards the valve, hold on. Li is waiting for us. She turned the red valve hard, a clang sounded, and blue mist spurted from the pipeline and poured into the system in the opposite direction, sweeping through the corridor like a blue storm. The roar of the mutated guard came from around the corner, and 3 monsters pounced. One was a centaur with multiple tentacles growing out of its legs, and the other had a split head, blue brain matter dripping, and eyes flashing red. Capture, samples, gifts of fear. Run. Meng Qi pushed Ziqing away and turned around to block the monster. She grabbed the iron pipe next to her and threw it at the nearest guard. Go to hell, you freaks. The tentacles wrapped around her legs and she screamed, but the blue light in her eyes suddenly brightened. Zi Qing, Li is on the B3 floor, at the bottom of the transformation cabin. She is tied up, and the blue silk is about to melt her. Go, I'll stop you. Stop them. A guard's claw tore open her shoulder, and blood mixed with blue liquid spurted out. Meng Qi's face twisted, my fear is over. Tell Li, I am not a bad person. She detonated the blue thread on her body, like a self-destruct device, the blue light exploded, and the guards screamed and retreated, sparks flying. Zi Qing's heart was as sharp as a knife. She looked back and saw Meng Qi's figure shattered into pieces in the blue mist. Meng Qi. But the roar of the guards approached, and Su Feng's laughter echoed, stupid girl, you destroyed the valve, it will only make the fog wilder. Come on, join us. Zi Qing gritted her teeth and turned around, rushing into the side door. Meng Qi's words echoed in her mind, B3 floor. The hallucinations were still tugging at her, but this time, she didn't collapse. Fear becomes fuel, and her bravery metamorphoses into calm determination, no longer a curious photographer, but a hunter. She groped for the stairs, and Li's cry became clearer, Ziqing, it hurts. The blue light pulsing deep in the base seemed to be calling her to fight. Ziqing's footsteps made a muffled sound on the stairs, and each step was like stepping on her heartbeat. The air on the B3 floor was thicker, and the blue mist enveloped her like soup. The light seeped out from the cracks in the wall, flickering with irregular pulses. Li's screams were intermittent, coming from the front, Ziqing, don't come. I'm a monster. The voice was no longer cheerful as usual, but mixed with wet sobs, like an old photo soaked in water. Ziqing gritted her teeth, holding the camera tightly with her right hand, and groping for the pipes on the wall with her left hand. Those blue blood vessels trembled slightly under her fingertips, as if mocking her intrusion. Li, hold on, I'm coming. Don't listen to those nonsense. She growled, and her voice echoed in the corridor, causing a low growl in the distance, like a beast waking up. At the end of the corridor is a half-open steel door with the mark, Core Transformation Area, engraved on it. Blue light leaks from the crack in the door, accompanied by a humming mechanical sound. Ziqing pushed open the door and walked in. The room looked like a twisted operating room. Countless tubes hung from the ceiling, broken glass bottles were scattered on the floor, and blue liquid was tumbling inside. The transformation cabin in the center is a transparent capsule, with Li's figure floating inside. Her arms are covered with blue silk, entangled like living vines, bubbles are bulging in parts of the skin, her eyes are half open, and her pupils are glowing with a strange blue light. Li curled up and murmured to herself, "I'm sorry. Ziqing, I was wrong. I always drag you down. Look, I became like this because I was too greedy." Zi Qing's heart felt like she had been hit by a hammer. She rushed to the front of the cabin and slapped the glass hard. "Li. Wake up, it's me. Didn't we agree to go on an adventure together? Don't believe those illusions, they are lying to you." The cabin door was locked. Zi Qing glanced around and found the control panel, a bunch of flickering screens that showed, transformation progress, 62%, fear is being injected. She pressed the buttons randomly, her fingers trembling. "Damn it, how do you turn this thing on? Li, can you hear me? Do you remember the first time we took a night scene? Under Taipei 101, you said I took the picture too dark, and I laughed at you like an old woman. Idiot, we are the strongest partners, who can break us up?" Li's head was raised slightly, and the blue silk slid along her neck. She murmured in a low voice, "Zi Qing, why are you here? Let's go. I saw everything in the past. I lost my mother's necklace when I was a child. Since then, I have been afraid of the dark and afraid of leaving things. Now I have lost myself. You should hate me, why not?" Her voice was broken, and phantoms appeared in her eyes. Zi Qing saw Li's vision shift, as if she was staring at something that didn't exist. Ziqing's heart sank. This was not a simple pain, it was the mist digging into her old wounds. Suddenly, the indoor lights turned on, a deep laughter came from the speakers, and Su Feng's face appeared on the main screen. He was wearing a protective mask, his eyes were shining with fanaticism, like a self-proclaimed emperor. "Ah, Miss Ziqing, I have finally waited for you. Your friend Li is enjoying my masterpiece." The blue silk nanoparticles not only transform the body, but also dig out the fear deep in the soul. "Look, she is blaming herself, because she knows that she is your burden. Come, join us, this mist forest is not a prison, but the cradle of a new world." Ziqing turned around and stared at the screen. "You pervert. Let her go. What kind of crazy plan is this? Transforming people into monsters just for your twisted pleasure?" As she spoke, she smashed the panel and tried to crack the cabin lock. The camera photos on her phone flashed, those images that recorded the horror of the base, Meng Qi's sacrifice, the claws of the mutated guards, and the blue mist swallowing everything. She raised her camera and took a picture of Li's face in the cabin. "Look, Li. This is evidence, we are not hallucinating. Su Feng is lying to us, he uses fog to control his brain, but we have something real, our friendship. Remember? Last time in the cafe, you said, Ziqing, what we took are not photos, but stories. This story is not over yet, I will not leave you behind." Su Feng laughed even louder. "Stupid girl, what do you know? This fog is my invention. Nanoparticles are spread in the air, amplifying human fears and turning it into a controllable energy source. Imagine, I release it into the city. Politicians are afraid of losing power, and businessmen are afraid of bankruptcy. Everyone kneels at my feet and voluntarily offers their souls. Li is just the starting point, you are the climax. Come and try the ultimate illusion, trapped in this forest forever, no one will remember you, the lonely photographer forever." The screen switched, and blue mist poured in from the vents, and Ziqing's vision was distorted. The hallucinations came like a flood, this time more vicious. Ziqing saw herself getting older, with gray hair, forever wandering in the fog, with nothing captured by the camera, only the shadows of empty trees. Li's face appeared on the tree trunk, mocking, "You should have saved me, but you stayed here forever, Zi Qing, you are a loser." The city lights flickered in the distance, but the fog blocked it like a wall. She stretched out her hand, but she felt endless blue threads, wrapping around her neck. "No, this is not true." Zi Qing knelt down, and a short monologue flashed in her mind, "Fear is eternal loneliness, but Li is my light, I have to lead us out, no more hesitation." She took a deep breath, grabbed the iron bar next to her, and smashed it against the control panel. Sparks flew everywhere, and the hatch released with a click. Li rolled out of the cabin. Lan Si was still twitching in her arm. She gasped and climbed up. "Zi Qing, those voices, they said I deserved to die." Zi Qing pulled her up and held her hand tightly. "Don't listen. Let's smash this damn place together. Look, my eyes are still clear, we won the first step." Li nodded, the blue light in her eyes became lighter. "Okay. I'm sorry, I was, like a coward just now." The two looked at each other and smiled. At that moment, friendship was like the sunshine outside the blue mist, piercing the darkness. The alarm sounded, and the guards roared outside the door. 5 or 6 mutated monsters rushed in, the leader of which looked like a humanoid spider, with 8 legs covered with blue thorns, and acid dripping from its mouth. "Sample, captured, gift from the master." Su Feng's voice echoed, "End of the tour. Let's play, Ziqing. Your bravery will only make the transformation more perfect." Ziqing pushed Li to the corner. "Li, you stay on the left side, and I'm on the right side. Use your reason to find weaknesses." She has grown up, and is no longer a follower, but a commander, with a voice as steady as a rock. Li gasped and picked up the broken glass on the ground, her eyes scanning the monster. "Their blue threads are the core, cut off the tentacles." A guard rushed towards Zi Qing, his claws scratched her arm, and blood spurted out, but she dodged and smashed its legs with an iron rod. "Fuck you. This missed rule. A dream." Li stabbed the glass from the side and pierced the monster's eyes. Zi Qing, behind. She turned around and kicked the other one, blue liquid splashed all over the floor. The monsters screamed and waved their tentacles wildly, and the room turned into a melee. Ziqing's camera fell and the lens shattered, but she did not stop, grabbing Li's hand. "Let's rush out together." "We destroyed the source." Li nodded. "Yes, best friends join forces, who is afraid of whom?" During the climax, Zi Qing's hallucination flashed back. The forest swallowed them up forever, but she shouted, "Li, remember our promise." Li responded, "Never let go." The two worked together to smash open the side door, and the monster struggled in the blue mist. Su Feng's roar burst from the speaker, "You can't escape. The mist is everywhere." Zi Qing pulled Li and rushed into the deeper corridor, blue light pulsating in front, like a heart beating. Their footsteps echoed, and friendship ignited determination, but deep within the base, there was a greater terror. Ziqing's lungs were on fire, and every breath of blue mist felt like swallowing a razor blade. She held Li's hand tightly, and the two stumbled into the depths of the corridor. The blue light pulsed faster in front, like a living heart laughing at their struggle. "Li, control room. The direction shown on the panel is just around the corner ahead." Ziqing shouted breathlessly, her voice bouncing off the metal wall. She glanced behind her. The roars of the monsters were still echoing, and the claws of the mutant guards scraped against the floor, making a harsh friction sound. "Hold on, we'll smash that core and the mist will be over." Li's breathing became even more chaotic, and the blue silk on her right arm began to squirm again, like live insects crawling under the skin. "Zi Qing, I feel something is wrong, those threads, they are pulling me back." She whispered, a blue light flashed in her eyes, and cold sweat broke out on her forehead. The spark of friendship was still there, but now it was like smoke blown away by the wind. "Don't worry about it, Ray. You're not a burden, you're my backing. Remember that time we were shooting street food at the night market? Those lanterns were swinging, and you said it looked like a ghost movie, but I laughed at you for being so nosy. Now, this place really looks like a ghost movie, and we have to shoot the ending. The corridors suddenly trembled, and thick blue mist erupted from the vents in the wall, like a flood from a dam. Su Feng's voice came from all directions, and the loudspeaker was mixed with the hum of distorted metal. Stupid girls, you think you can run to the control room? The mist is an extension of me, it obeys my orders. The entire base is attacked, and the nanoparticles are fully activated, making your fear. Don't be afraid of merging reality. The fog was so thick that you couldn't even see your fingers. Zi Qing's vision was distorted, and a phantom appeared in front of her eyes. Li's face turned into Meng Qi's, pale and strange. She stretched out her hand and whispered, Zi Qing, why don't you save me? Just like you didn't save Li. No. This is fake. Ziqing shook her head and shouted, Li, hold on to me. Don't look at those ghosts. But Li's pace slowed down, and she stopped, staring at the image floating in the air. It was a picture of her childhood, the figure of her mother leaving, turning into a monster wrapped in blue threads in the fog. Mom, no, I was wrong. I always lose things, friendships, and myself. Li murmured. Blue silk ran from her arms to her shoulders, and her skin bulged with more bubbles, like a blue fruit about to burst. Her eyes were completely blue, hallucinations and reality mixed together. She saw monsters crawling out of the wall, but in fact it was her own shadow twisting. Zi Qing turned around and pulled her. Li. Wake up, it's me. Aren't we hiding from the rain in the alleys of Taipei? That time you said, Zi Qing, friendship is like this, it's warm even when it gets wet. Now, we are soaked in fog, but our hearts are still warm. Li blinked, blue light flashed, and she nodded vigorously, yes. Zi Qing, I tried to resist, but it's so strong. The two continued to move forward. The door sign at the corner flashed the word, control room, but there was chaos in front of the door. More monsters emerged from the blue mist, and the leader looked like a half-human, half-tree deformity. The branch-like tentacles threw out acid, which sizzled on the ground. Sample, fusion. They growled, their eyes reflecting the fear of Ziqing and Li. Charge over. Ziqing commanded. She picked up a broken pipe on the ground and used it as a weapon, then smashed it at the nearest monster. The tube hit the tentacle with a muffled sound, and blue liquid splashed all over her, as hot as fire. Li, go around to the left and look for the door lock. I'll block these guys. Li nodded, but her movements were slow, and the blue thread had climbed up to her neck. She stabbed out a kick, kicked a little monster over, and gasped, Zi Qing, the mutation, it's accelerating. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on. The monsters rushed towards me, and a spider-like guy jumped up and hit Li's back. Zi Qing dodged to block it and stabbed its eyes with the pipe. Get away. You lackeys of the mist. The battle was like a violent storm, and Ziqing's arm received new injuries. Blood mixed with blue liquid flowed down, but her eyes lit up, no longer fear, but pure determination. She shouted, Li, the door is open. Get in. Li smashed the door lock hard, and the two rolled into the control room, but Li's mutation had reached the limit. Her arms swelled into blue lumps, and the threads pulsated like blood vessels. She knelt down, moaning in pain, Zi Qing, let's go. I blocked them. I owe you. I've owed it since I was a child. In the hallucination, she saw herself trapped in the transformation cabin forever, and Zi Qing left alone, laughing at her weakness. No. I can't hold you back anymore. Zi Qing turned around and said, what nonsense. Let's go together. But the monster had already rushed into the door, its tentacles lashing out like whips. Li suddenly stood up, blue silk burst out, her body was semi-mutated, and her skin cracked with blue light, but she threw herself at the group of monsters and blocked the passage with her body. Zi Qing, run. Go and smash the core. Tell Su Feng that he has ruined too many people. Her voice was torn, as if she was fighting the monster in her heart. A giant guard's claw pierced her shoulder, and blue liquid spurted out. She screamed but refused to retreat. Go, bestie. This is my atonement. I remember that skewer of chicken steaks at the night market. We promised never to be separated. But now, I will take a step forward. The monsters tore at her, and she used her last strength to throw out the glass shards, which penetrated into the core of the leading monster. The blue thread broke, triggering a small explosion, and the passage was temporarily blocked. Li. No. Ziqing's tears were mixed with blood. She wanted to rush back, but Li's eyes were firm. Live, make a story, for me. The passage collapsed, and the screams of the monster and Li were buried under the rubble. Ziqing's heart was like a knife, and a brief monologue flashed through. Li's sacrifice is fire, burning away my hesitation. I have to end all this, for her. Turning around, she faced the center of the control room alone, a giant spherical core from which blue mist spewed, surrounded by screens and panels. Su Feng's projection appeared, and he took off his mask, his face covered with crazy wrinkles. Wonderful. Your friend volunteered to sacrifice herself, and the nanoparticles made her a perfect barrier. Now, it's your turn, Ziqing. Come and feel my past. All of this is because of them. Ziqing gasped and approached, grabbing the cable next to her and using it as a whip. Your past. Stop talking nonsense. You are a pervert, transforming people and manipulating fear. Why? Tell me. She swung out the cable and smashed a small screen, causing sparks to fly. Su Feng's projection was distorted, and he chuckled. You want to know? Well, let the fog tell you. The blue mist surged towards Ziqing, and hallucinations were like floods. She saw young Su Feng, in the urban laboratory, being laughed at by her boss. Your nanotheory? Nonsense. Then, there was an accidental explosion, and her lover died in the fog experiment, and he was kicked out, forever alone. They said I was crazy. But I proved to them that this mist is not poison, but salvation. Amplify fear and make people surrender. I want to rebuild the world and no one will abandon me again. Raise sacrifice. It's just fuel. Your bravery will make you my queen. Redemption. This is your trauma. Ziqing yelled. In her hallucination, she saw Li's face superimposed on Su Feng's lover, twisting into a blue silk monster. You destroyed yourself and others with fear. Meng Qi, Li, they are not samples, they are people. She rushed to the core, dodged the blue silk tentacles that spurted out, wrapped a cable around a pump, and yanked it off. The machinery whined, the fog weakened a bit, and the blue light in the room flickered. Do you think you can win like this? The nanoparticles have penetrated into your body. Soon, you will beg me to transform. Su Feng roared, and the projection switched. He appeared in person, walking out of the side door, holding a syringe, and his eyes were as red as blood. Zi Qing turned around and faced him. Come on, try. Your empire starts from your pain and ends here. She rushed forward and kicked the console over, the keyboard shattered and the pulse of her core slowed down. Su Feng swung the needle and said, Stupid. This mist is eternal. But Ziqing dodged and hit his arm with a broken tube. The needle fell to the ground and blue liquid spilled out. She grabbed his collar. Tell me, is Li still alive? Your particles can be reversed. Su Feng gasped, with cracks in his wild laughter. She is already my masterpiece, but you, Zi Qing, your fear will make me reborn. During the confrontation, Zi Qing's fist smashed into his face, blood spattered, but the core alarm went off, the fog began to backfire on the entire base, the walls cracked, and blue light rushed like a storm. Ziqing pushed him away, crawled to the bottom of the core, and found the main power cord. This is your weakness. She pulled it off with force, and the electric current flashed. The mist was as thin as the ebbing tide, but Su Feng rushed over and grabbed her leg. Don't destroy it. The two rolled into a ball. Sci-fi. Nanoparticles flickered in the air, like falling stars. The final blow of the illusion made Zi Qing silly smile. Be brave, Zi Qing. She kicked Su Feng away and hit the core glass shell. The crack spread and blue mist surged out, but it was no longer so sticky. The vibrations in the base intensified. Su Feng got up, and the enthusiasm in his eyes shattered. You ruined everything. Zi Qing stood firm and gasped, no, you ruined it yourself. Now, the game is over. But the roar in the depths was still there, and although the mist was weak, it lingered like a living creature, waiting for the final blow. The vibrations of the base were like the roar of the earth, and Zi Qing felt as if the metal floor beneath her feet was shattering with every step she took. She gasped and stared at the core glass shell. The cracks spread like spider webs, and blue mist leaked from the gaps, but it was no longer as sticky and clinging as before, but as thin as smoke about to dissipate. Su Feng got up from the ground, his face twisted into a ball, blood dripping from his forehead, mixed with sweat and shining with a strange blue light. The end? Ha! Do you think this is the end? He growled, his voice hoarse like rust squeezed out of his throat. This mist is my child, it will swallow you, swallow this damn base, and swallow all your memories. Ziqing took a step back, still holding the broken tube tightly in her hand, her heart beating like a drum, and Li's screams still echoing in her ears. Your child. This is a monster. You destroyed Li, you destroyed Mingqi, and now it's your turn, she yelled, her voice echoing in the control room, accompanied by the piercing beep of the alarm. The walls began to crack, debris rained down, and blue mist billowed in the air, rushing toward her as if it came alive. Su Feng rushed forward. Although his movements were slower, the madness in his eyes was even stronger. He grabbed the remains of the syringe on the ground and stabbed Zi Qing in the shoulder. Feel it. The ultimate illusion, eternal loneliness. This is the gift I leave to you, to let you know what it feels like to be abandoned. The tip of the needle grazed her skin, and blue liquid splashed out. In an instant, Ziqing's vision collapsed. The world turned into a gray sea of fog. She stood alone in the boundless forest, surrounded by endless tree shadows. The branches stretched out like arms, but they could never catch her. Li, where are you? She murmured, looking around, but only the wind responded, like a mocking whisper. The hallucination deepened, and she saw her childhood home, the old alleys of Taipei, and her mother's back gradually receding into the distance and turned into a blue mist. Why do you always leave me behind? Curiosity kills the cat, you stupid girl. Mother's voice echoed in the fog, and then Li's smiling face, under the lanterns of the night market, she said, Ziqing, we will never be separated. But Li's face twisted, turned into a blue silk monster, turned and left. You are too brave, always rushing forward, leaving me alone. Loneliness came like a tide. Ziqing knelt down and held her head in her hands. The blue mist penetrated her pores, amplifying the fear 100 times. She saw the future. She was trapped in this forest forever, the camera was broken, the faces of her friends faded away one by one, leaving her alone, staring at the empty lens. No, this is not true. She whispered, tears falling, but the illusion was unforgiving. Su Feng's laughter came from the fog. Did you see it? This is my past, your future. No one will save you, no one needs your bravery. You are just a nosy photographer who breaks into places you shouldn't. Ziqing gritted her teeth, and a brief inner monologue flashed through her mind, lonely? No, this is his poison. I have been with him, from alleys to forests, and Li's fire is still burning. Her hand touched the camera pendant around her neck. It was a gift from Li and was engraved with, best friends forever. She squeezed hard and stood up, Su Feng. You are wrong. Loneliness is not a curse, it is a starting point. I have changed from a curious girl to a woman who can face you. This is not given by your mist, but earned by myself. She yelled, her voice tearing through the edges of the illusion, and the sea of mist began to waver, like clouds blown away by the wind. In reality, the control room was in a mess. Su Feng gasped and approached, veins popping up on his face. Impossible. How do you get away? The nanoparticles should make you collapse. He punched him, but Zi Qing dodged, grabbed his arm, and twisted it back, because I am not your sample. Recall your past. You were abandoned by your boss and your lover died. But I am different. I have Li and Mengqi's clues. They taught me that fear is not a weapon, but a threshold to cross. She pushed hard and Su Feng hit the console, the panel shattered and sparks flew. The bass roared more intensely, the floor tilted, and the blue mist generator, the giant sphere, began to emit a low whine, like a heart about to burst. At this moment, a pale figure emerged from the mist, the outline of Meng Qi's remnant soul, translucent, with a faint blue light shining in her eyes but not so eerie. Zi Qing, do you hear me? Her voice whispered like the wind, with a familiar and strange tenderness. I am not an illusion, but an echo left by the particles. The generator has a weakness, the red valve at the bottom. Pull it, and the fog will bite back on itself. The escape route is in the East Passage. Don't hesitate, follow me. I once thought loneliness was eternal, but you proved me wrong. Meng Qi's image stretched out her hand and pointed to the bottom of the generator, where the red lever hidden under the blue mist flashed with warning lights. Ziqing nodded, her eyes blurred with tears. Meng Qi, thank you, from the tree house to now, the clues you gave saved me. Not all remnant souls have to be trapped, I will take your story out. She rushed towards the generator, avoiding Su Feng's attack. The blue mist wrapped around her like tentacles, but she remembered Mengqi's words, leaned over and groped to find the valve. Su Feng got up, his laughter mixed with despair. Don't touch it. That's my lifeline. He rushed over, grabbed a broken wire in his hand, and threw it towards Zi Qing's back. You think you can escape by destroying it? The base will bury you, just like Li. The wire brushed against her shoulder, burning like fire, but Ziqing refused to retreat. She turned back and glared at him. Li is not buried, she lives in my heart. Just like the redemption your lover should have, not this twisted thing. With a hard pull, the valve disconnected, the red alarm flashed, the generator made a loud noise, and the blue mist poured back, like being sucked into a black hole. Su Feng screamed, no. My mist. He rushed forward and grabbed Zi Qing's legs, his eyes red and swollen. Please, don't destroy my world. I just want not to be alone. His voice broke, with rare vulnerability, like a popped balloon. The last wave of hallucinations hit, and Li's image emerged. It was not a monster, but herself in the night market. The chicken steak was stained with oil on her mouth. She smiled and said, Ziqing, be brave. Do you remember the group photo we took in the foggy alley? She is still beautiful even if she gets wet, and this fog can't stop us. Go ahead and smash it for me. I'll wait for you outside for a midnight snack. Li's phantom stretched out her hand, as warm as real, and gave Zi Qing a push. You grew from a curious girl to a hero who can save people. This is our growth. Don't let Su Feng's loneliness become yours. Ziqing's heart felt like it was lit. She kicked Su Feng away and punched the glass shell of the generator. For Li. For Mengqi. For all the people you destroyed. The cracks exploded, and blue mist erupted like a volcano, backlashing the entire core. The nanoparticles disintegrated into harmless blue light fragments in the air. Su Feng fell to the ground, curled up into a ball, and muttered, It's over, they left me again. The vibrations in the base reached its peak, the walls collapsed, and the control room tilted. Ziqing grabbed Meng Qi's direction and rushed towards the East Passage. Meng Qi, Li, thank you, she shouted. The blue mist gradually thinned, and the horrible sticky feeling subsided, replaced by fresh air. The passage was narrow and gravel rolled down, but Meng Qi's remnant soul led the way, and the image flickered. Hurry, the exit is around the corner, the forest will let you go. Li's phantoms stood side by side. Best friend, shoot the ending, our story will not end. Zi Qing ran, The fear in her heart was like ebbing, and the trajectory of her growth was clear. From a photographer who strayed into the forest, to a warrior who destroyed the empire, she was no longer the girl who was susceptible to hallucinations. Behind her, Su Feng's cry was swallowed up by the roar, and the final sign of explosion came from the depths of the base, but in front, a ray of natural light had penetrated, and the edge of the foggy forest seemed to be calling her back. The end of the passage finally appeared. An iron door was half open. Outside was the greenery of the forest. The sunlight was shining like golden threads, stinging Ziqing's eyes. She pushed the door open, staggering, the burns on her shoulders were burning, and the broken pipe was still in her hand, like a makeshift crutch. Behind her, the roar of the base was like the roar of a wild beast, the fire of the explosion burst out from the entrance of the passage, and the heat wave pushed her forward. The blue mist retreated rapidly like frightened smoke, as if Su Feng's crazy empire had spit out all its poisonous gas at the last moment. Run, Zi Qing. Don't look back. Li's phantom was still shouting in her ears, her voice as clear as a hawker in a night market, with that familiar Taipei accent, always mixed with a playful twang. Ziqing didn't have time to tell whether it was a real hallucination or an echo in her heart. She gritted her teeth and rushed forward. The branch scraped her cheek, leaving tiny traces of blood. The forest is no longer the swallowing blue sea. The surrounding fog disperses like an ebbing tide, and the sun shines on the ground, revealing clumps of wild flowers and moss. The air is filled with the fresh smell of earth instead of the sticky chemical smell. The aftermath of the explosion shook the ground, trees shook, and birds flew away. Ziqing fell to the ground, rolled into a bush with her head in her arms, and felt that the whole world was shaking. Boom! With a loud bang, the core of the base collapsed. Zi Qing looked up. On the hillside in the distance, blue fireballs rose, followed by black smoke. Su Feng's laughter seemed to still echo in the wind, but was swallowed up by the roar of the explosion. She panted and sat up, placing her palms on the ground. The soil was moist, as if the forest was comforting her. It's over, it's really over. She murmured, tears mixed with sweat sliding down her face. Meng Qi's image flashed for a moment and faded in the sunlight. I'm free, Zi Qing. Your bravery gave us an exit. Li's phantom also smiled, my best friend, it's your turn to go home now. Remember to bring a midnight snack, the kind of chicken steak with spicy sauce. Ziqing smiled, with tears in her smile. She stood up dragging her injured body and moved step by step to the edge of the forest. The scrapes on the legs made every step feel like stepping on the edge of a knife, but compared to the hole in my heart, what was this? The shadow of the hallucination is still there, and occasionally lonely images in the blue mist flash through my mind, my mother's back, Li's twisted face, but now, they are no longer monsters, but reminders. Life is too short and friendship is too precious. She touched the camera pendant around her neck, and Li's engraving flashed in the sun, best friends will last forever. Curiosity once led her into trouble, but it also made her grow, from a girl who loved taking pictures of kittens in the alley to a woman who can smash crazy empires. The road at the edge of the forest was finally in sight. Ziqing stumbled out of the tree line. A patrol car just happened to drive up, sirens blaring. The driver was a middle-aged policeman wearing sunglasses and peeking his head out of the car window. Miss. Where did you come from? Oh my God, you are so injured. He jumped out of the car and supported her. Something happened in the forest. We received an abnormal signal, and we could see the smoke from the explosion at the base. Zi Qing leaned on his arm, her voice weak but firm. It's the experimental base. Su Feng, that perverted scientist, he used mist to do human experiments. Li, my friend, she didn't come out. The policeman's expression changed, and he pressed the intercom. Headquarters, emergency. A survivor was found on the edge of the forest, seriously injured. Report the illegal experiment site. Request medical support. The siren of the ambulance sounded soon. Zi Qing was put on a stretcher, and an injection was inserted into his arm, and the pain gradually numbed. She closed her eyes, and Li's smiling face appeared in her mind. Ziqing, don't cry. Our adventure was worth it. When I woke up in the hospital ward, it was already 3 days later. Taipei's sunshine poured in through the cracks in the curtains, and the familiar smell of disinfectant made Ziqing breathe a sigh of relief. She turned her head and saw a bouquet of wild chrysanthemums on the table beside the bed, next to her camera, broken, but the pendant was intact. The door opened, and a female reporter walked in, holding her notebook under her arm. Miss Lin Ziqing. I am Xiao Wei, the editor of Urban Lens. We heard that you escaped from the foggy forest and witnessed the hidden base. The police have cordoned off the scene, but can you share it? This story is so shocking. Ziqing sat up with her shoulders still wrapped in gauze. She hesitated and nodded, okay, but not for fame, but for Li and all the victims. Su Feng's plan. He used nanoparticles to create illusions, transform the human body, and wanted to build a monster kingdom that would not be lonely. But it ruined everything. She took a deep breath and began to talk, from entering the forest driven by curiosity, to discovering clues about Meng Qi in the treehouse, to the confrontation at the base. Reporter Xiao Wei was dumbfounded and took notes from time to time. Oh my god, this sounds like a science fiction horror movie. But where are the photos you took? The police said you have evidence. The camera is broken, but the images in my mind will never be forgotten. Ziqing smiled bitterly. However, I have a few candid photos from the treehouse, given by Meng Qi. Those mutations under the blue mist. I will use them to make a photo album. Xiao Wei's eyes lit up. Great. We can cooperate in publishing and reveal the truth. The government has investigated. Su Feng's body was found in the ruins, the base was completely destroyed, and his plans were buried forever. Li's family has also been contacted, and we will help commemorate her. In the days after being discharged from the hospital, Ziqing moved into Xiao Wei's photography studio and organized materials together. The studio is in Zimending, and there is a lively night market downstairs. The aroma of the chicken chop stall wafts up, reminding her of Li. Hey, Ziqing, don't be in a daze. This photo inside the base, the blue mist looks like a ghost, it's so tense. Xiao Wei handed over a cup of milk with boba in it, which is full of Taipei flavor. Ziqing took it and smiled. Yes, President Li said that the things I photograph have souls. This time, I want to let them speak and avenge her. They spent 2 months staying up late editing the pictures and writing annotations. Ziqing's inner drama flashed briefly, the shadow of hallucinations was still there, and she occasionally woke up at night, dreaming of blue mist chasing her. But now, she's learned to embrace it, not run away from it. Ray, look, I didn't let fear win. She whispered into the air and continued typing. The photo album is named Surviving the Fog, and the cover is the last photo she took, the blue light in the cracks in the base, symbolizing the broken madness. It contains not only scary scenes, but also old photos of Taipei alleys and a photo with Li, with the text, "Curiosity is the ticket, friendship is the key." When I came back from the forest, I learned to cherish every smiling face. The press conference was held in the Aslight bookstore. It was crowded with people and flashing lights kept flashing. Ziqing stood on the stage, wearing a simple white t-shirt with Li's pendant hanging around her neck. Thank you for coming. This book is not my story, it is Li's, Meng Qi's, and all the people swallowed by the fog. The audience burst into applause, and an old man raised his hand. Girl, you are as brave as the Taipei boy when I was young. The government should commend you for exposing this kind of thing. Sure enough, a few days later, the Ministry of Culture awarded the Brave Photography Award, with the words, "Witness the truth and protect humanity," engraved on the trophy. On the way home, Ziqing walked into the night market and bought 2 chicken steaks, one spicy and one plain. She sat on Li Changai's bench, eating, tears falling into the paper box. Li, try it. This mist cannot separate us. Your sacrifice has made me stronger. I used to always rush forward, but now I know that bravery is not carried alone, but to move forward with memories. The wind blew, and the lanterns in the night market swayed, just like Li's laughter in her ears. My best friend, give me the hot one. Our story will always be the brightest light in Taipei. Ziqing wiped away her tears and stood up. The shadow of the forest is always there, but it is no longer a prison, but a medal. She is Lin Ziqing, photographer and survivor. She has transformed from a curious girl into a tough woman who will always cherish life and always remember friendship. The night market was crowded with people, and she blended into it. The camera was pointed forward, taking pictures of her new beginning.